teachings of the Baha'i faith, that if the Native American Indians were properly educated and guided, that they would in turn be great leaders. That is but a paraphrasing of a statement made by Abdu'l-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. I have with me this evening some very special guests. We have a gentleman by the name of Ed Roberts, who has spent 20 years of his life working on Indian reservations with those Native Americans. And a little later on, we'll be talking to two projecteers who have served 2 summers and 1 summer, respectively, on an Indian reservation in South Dakota. This is Claudia Mulvaney with Baha'i Fireside, and we're so glad that you joined us this evening. Ed Roberts, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Would you tell us a little bit about yourself before you ended up on the Indian reservations?
Well, I really come from a very rough background, and I run into the Baha'i faith in '61, and with a great deal of difficulty finally turned to the faith. And when I got into the writings of the instructions of what the American people were to do, he told us, Abdu'l-Baha told us to go to take the message to the American Indian. And when he told us that they could illumine the world, I figured that was a good place to start. So from that time on, I've spent a great deal of time working with them.
Now, one of the things that we've talked about prior to the program, and I think you watching might be very interested in that aspect, and that is that there is no conflict between the teachings of the Baha'i faith and the teachings of the Native Americans.
Well, the Baha'i faith teaches first that all of the religions on the earth are one and the same. There is no conflict between the messengers themselves. That the conflict is the things that man has added. And the Indian people who are involved in the old Indian ways look at the Baha'i faith. They see no conflict, so they see it as just a continuation of theirs. And so it goes, everything is in complete harmony. If you look in the symbolism of the old Indian way, you find many things that lead you to the faith, many beautiful things that lead you to the faith.
Can you give us 1 or 2 examples, Ed, of those things that are parallel? And
one of the things that is a very interesting thing among the Sioux is that they talk about the white buffalo calf woman that brought the pipe, and she said she would return out of the east. And the vision, or there was a maiden come to Baha'u'llah in a prison that was a maiden in white, that just literally fulfills that prophecy, and the Indian people take it up. There are other things like they talk about the morning star, and the morning star being an 8-pointed star, and the symbolism of the Bab is an 8-pointed star, and then they talk about the sun being the return of the messenger. And all of these fit right with the symbolism and with the things that Baha'u'llah talks about. And there's been Indian people who have found the story of the Bab and the story of Baha'u'llah, and then looked at the 7 rites that are among the Indian people. And those 7 rites, the story of those 7 rites leads them to, tells them that when the 8th and the 9th rite appear, and that this will be the time and this will be what happened, well, they look at the Bab and Baha'u'llah as the 8th and the 9th rite, and they just turn to the faith. That's very quickly they turn. And there's a lot of beautiful things. There are many, many things I could talk about. Just about everything in the old culture leads you right to the faith. And what's beautiful about it is the followers of the old culture find no conflict, and they do not fight against the faith. They just go on with it.
Now, you've been working for the last 20 years on one reservation only?
On many reservations.
Is there a story that stands out in your mind of someone being touched by the faith particularly?
There's one that is probably the the one thing that touches me the most, and it, of course, I was there and I felt all of the emotions that were involved in it. When I first went into Wambly many years ago, there was an old man, a very old man, and he was a deacon in the Episcopal Church, but also involved in the old way, and there was conflict between one would say one and one would say the other at that time, but when the Baha'is came, well, he recognized the spirit and the attitude in which we came, and he asked us many times to come and help, and many times there were not enough people to do anything to have much effect at all at the teaching work. And this old man passed away years later, but one thing that seemed to affect the area, because he was so respected and so loved in his community, was on his deathbed he told his wife to trust in God and trust the Baha'is. And that was this old man he used to go on the hill and pray with us, and we used to have really some neat times. Beautiful old man. I love the old people among the Indians, because the old people are very open-minded. They take right in things that they know and recognize things that are true.
Now, Ed, you've used the term the old ways a couple of times, and I know that the teachings and the beliefs of the Native Americans are extensive, and it would take a long time to explain, but is there a way to summarize that phrase, the old ways?
The old ways are seem to be a harmony, mostly a harmony with everything. The old ways of the Sioux Indians sought harmony in everything they did. Well, it's like the same thing, that if we know that truth does not conflict with truth, so everything that is true must be in harmony with everything else. And that's the way they lived, and that's the way they struggled to be. And the spirit, one thing that was beautiful about them that is different from any religion I've ever found anywhere, is they accepted the messengers and they accepted the visions of the old holy men right off. They did not fight about it, and they were accepted. So the messages that come to them from God were clear and accepted with no qualms at all. And this is the only culture in the world that I know that happened for sure.
Well, this is very interesting. When we come back from commercial, we're going to be meeting with two projecteers, and we're going to talk with them and Ed about the actual transformations within the Indian communities in the last 3 years. When we come back, I hope you'll join us.
Look at me. What do you see? I know, adults see teenagers as either young and restless or computer whiz kids. Stereotypes. False conclusions based on insufficient data. Stereotypes of young people are no more accurate than those about old people. We're all individuals.
This message is brought to you as a public service of the Baha'i Faith.
Take a teenager to lunch. There's probably one in your neighborhood.
Don't look at the monitor. Hi, welcome back. I'm Claudia Mulvaney, and I'm here with Ed Roberts, Omid Furatan, and John Cadem. Welcome to the program, John and Omid.
Thank you.
I know now that you've given up your summers, and we'll be talking later about why you're not in school this semester and traveling around the United States. I'd like to talk a little bit, starting with Ed, who will tell us a little bit about how the Indians used to be, and perhaps then you two could fill us in on how they have changed in the last 3 years. Ed, could you give us sort of a summary of how the conditions were? And
the conditions on the reservations throughout South Dakota have been very, very bad for a long, long time. Every aspect of it, the crime level, the unemployment, unemployment is at 75%. I can remember a 30-day period in a town of 500 where there were 5 people murdered. The children talk about murder, suicide, rape, first-hand information they've watched it happen. The conditions were very, very bad there years ago, and they are still rough, but it's improving.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit, Omid, about what's happening. What do you see changing from stories that Ed has told you and the projects you've been involved with?
Well, the 3 years that the MS Gibson project have been established, in the Pine Ridge and Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, it had made a tremendous change. I have been there last summer, and I've seen with my own eyes that the youth that have been in alcoholism and drugs have taken a drastic change towards another way, towards a way of hope, another way towards a way of God. And it really shows, even the Indians themselves believe that the tremendous change the Baha'i faith, especially the Amos Gibson Project, has made on the reservations.
Now, the Amos Gibson Project, for those of you who may not know, is a project that started 3 years ago in honor of a hand of the cause of God by the name of Amos Gibson. And it was dedicated primarily to teaching the Native Americans. John, what have you seen in terms of changes on the reservations?
Well, it really is so moving, especially from a personal viewpoint, because when we first went to the reservations, these were people who, as Ed was saying, were alcoholics, and they were, the first summer I remember, things were being stolen from us so rapidly that we weren't even sure that we would have anything left in terms of personal belongings at the end of 3 months. But these youth who were even stealing things from us started joining the project. They would become Baha'is and they joined the project and they started teaching the faith with us to their own people. And the transformation just in these few youth. But in whole towns, you'd find transformations to where we would go to visit with grandmothers. And they would cry with us and they'd beg, please, please stay with me and say a few more prayers. Or come back every day and just say one prayer with my family. Teach my grandchildren this faith. And the receptivity has been so much more, and the authorities, in fact, have been coming to Ed and saying, thank you so much for coming here, because now the crime level is down to almost zero. Wombly is one of the worst reservations on the reservation, worst villages on the reservation. And when we were there, the crime rate was almost zero.
Now, what percentage of the population, Ed, are members of the Baha'i faith on that particular village?
In that particular village, there is 20%. There's about 500 people, and there are 100 Baha'is.
So with a mere 20% of that village embracing the cause of Baha'u'llah, there is a change in the atmosphere.
Everyone has been affected. You know, they all, it seems like it's catchy, you know, they just...
It's catching. What is it?
The faith and the spirit that we bring. Yeah, and you know, when we first came there, it was like happiness. Just because we were happy, we were so attractive. And this was one of the requirements, the boys will tell you about the project. One of the requirements on the project was they had to be happy, loving, or caring, or we would send them home.
That's a very specific injunction, I think the word is.
Right.
Obi, you had told me that you had a story, a very special story, that you wanted to share with our viewers tonight.
That's the same story that really motivated me and John to do this tour. Mr. Edwin Roberts has sent me and John to the village of Parmelee to establish feast, which is a Baha'i gathering every 19 days that Baha'is gather together and pray and consult about different issues within the community. And we were to help the Parmelee community to establish it. And we went to Parmelee, and there were supposed to be 29 Baha'is in Parmelee, but unfortunately we couldn't locate them. Either they were away for the summer, or they were working or something. We couldn't just locate them. So we went to a house that we knew a Baha'i was there. So we knocked on the door, he opened the door, he came out, and we introduced ourselves. We said, we are Omid and John, two Baha'is trying to establish feast in Parmelee. Could you help us locate some Baha'is? And it was interesting. He came out, he sat down, and he asked us to sit with him. So we sat down, and then he told us that the Baha'is in Parmelee have made such drastic changes towards better. He said that last summer we came, and Parmelee was touched mainly last summer. He said last summer we came and we taught the faith, and people became Baha'is, and they changed towards better. He said he became Baha'i, and you see, as you know, there's a lot of alcoholism going around in the reservations. I said he quit alcohol. Then he started teaching the faith to his cousin, and he quit alcohol. and it was working towards better, and it was, it was doing an excellent job. And he said the summer ended. We have made such progress, but unfortunately the project is mainly being supported by youth, by students which go to college. So when the summer ended, unfortunately many projecteers had to go back to their school, start school. So he said, when you left, we eventually start forgetting the teachings, and we eventually start forgetting what we're supposed to do. And so he started drinking, and so did his cousin started drinking. And in the middle of the winter, his cousin hung himself because he has lost hope. And it really touched us because we saw what a difference can the faith make. And he was begging us. He said the only answer to our problems is the Baha'i faith. The only answer is the teachings of the Baha'u'llah. And he says, so it is not fair for you to go and take these teachings away from us. And so it touched us to a degree that we decided to make this tour, take a semester off our school, and do this tour and ask the Baha'is all around the United States to help us to go to these reservations and to help these Indians to what they could be.
Now, that's so inspirational. I mean, I feel like I almost want to pack everything up and go right this minute. When you talk about the teachings, what in the Baha'i teachings is most attractive to these Native Americans that you come in contact with? You know, they say that you were not around and you left when the fall came and people forgot. What is it that they're forgetting? What specifically are some of the teachings that are most important when you communicate with Native Americans?
One of the most important things that we found they're attracted to, and most people wouldn't believe at all, is the law.
The law?
The law that Baha'u'llah lays down. They are so attracted to the law. And I think my feelings about it has been that they have been so long without it. And they've literally dropped all of the standards that they live by, and they recognize that there really is a strong need for a standard in their society. And so it's been, and that's one of the things, of course, the unity and the recognition of the unity of mankind and the elimination of prejudice. Those things obviously are going to be strong attractions to them. But,
what do you see happening, and I'd love a short comment from each of you, as this Amos Gibson project progresses? What do you see, John, for the American Indians?
I see unity for the American Indians. And that's something that in their past, that their unity, their tribe, was their substance. And they lost that. And we're hoping that the Baha'i faith will bring unity back to them, and love and fellowship, and let them work as a unit again.
And Omid, what do you see?
I see spiritual distinction. I see the potential the Indians have as being leaders in spiritual and science subjects, but unfortunately because they don't have the means and have not been exposed to the means, they're not. And because of that potential, I believe the Baha'i faith can give them that chance and that opportunity.
Now, we've received two very optimistic outlooks from two young men who have spent 2 summers and 1 summer respectively. What is your perspective, Ed, after 20 years of working with the Native Americans?
I think maybe I should talk about the goals, because I was one of them that helped set the goals for the project. The goals is to bring the whole Sioux Nation into the Baha'i faith.
The whole Sioux Nation into the Baha'i faith?
That's the goals of the project.
And you believe...
There's no question about it.
It's no question.
Oh, people like Frank Foolscrow have enrolled in the faith. Frank is the ceremonial chief of the Oglala Sioux. And we've been told by people who are not Baha'is throughout that reservation that there's a good chance the whole Sioux Nation will follow.
When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more with Omid and John about their tour outside of the reservation for this whole semester, which they've taken off from school. Before we go, I'd like to thank you very much, Ed Roberts, for being here. It's an honor and a privilege for you to be here on the show. We'll be right back.
unauthorized. This message, a public service of the Baha'i Faith.
Hi, welcome back to Baha'i Fireside. We're talking here with John and Omid. They're called Projecteers, and they've been working the last 2 and 1 year respectively. I'm not sure which ones worked 2 and which ones worked 1. Summers working with the Baha'i Faith on Indian reservations in South Dakota. What I'd like to find out first from you both is, what did you take time off from, John?
Well, we took time off from school.
And where do you go to school?
I go to school at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. And I took this semester off because of the need that we felt on the reservation to go out and teach the Baha'i Faith at a deeper level to the Baha'i Indians who were there and to take the message to them. So we took a semester out of school. We won't be attending school this semester. And we're hoping to make this semester up either this summer or later, or just fall behind. That's what we do.
Omid, what are you studying, by the way, John?
I'm chemistry, pre-med.
Chemistry, pre-med. And Omid, what is your field of study?
I'm studying electrical engineering. I'm a senior in CIT in Maryland. And when it was interesting, I was going to take this semester off, my advisor discouraged me so badly. He said, "You're a senior, we only have like 2 semesters to go, don't..."
A senior?
Yes, I'm a senior in school.
And you took the next to last semester off?
Yes, and he was very much upset. He said that you're going to ruin your whole education. But then it comes to priority, that what is more important. And I felt like I can make it up if I want to, so I'll take this semester off.
Would you explain or give us some details of this tour that you've taken? You have a slide program and a presentation, and where are you taking this tour? You have quite an extensive itinerary, I understand. Omid, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure. The slideshow presents the Indian culture. It presents the Amos Gibson Project and the difference the Baha'i Faith is making in South Dakota. And it is a very inspiring slideshow. This is a nationwide tour. We're going all over the United States to promote Amos Gibson Project and to show the need that the Indians in the Rosebud and Pioneer Reservation need. And one interesting thing is that once we were passing through these states that we had to go through, we went to Wind River, one of another reservations in Idaho. And as we arrived there, we turned the radio on, and the news said that 19 youth just hanged themselves. And they,
on that reservation?
On that reservation. It really hit us that the need is not only in the Rosebud and Pine Ridge Reservation, but all the reservations throughout the United States. The need is there. And this is what really hit us.
I wonder, why is it, John, do you think we hear news of a single murder or a single suicide in Podunk, I can't even use a word or a name, but we hear about what you'd call American news stories, and a situation like that of 19 people doesn't even hit the news. Why do you think that is?
I don't know about individual cases, but I know in the case of the Wind River Reservation, they were all youth, children, and they had all started to think of themselves as bad people, as evil people. They had lost hope, and they were afraid to go to their parents, and their parents really didn't know how to deal with them. The whole structure of the fabric of the society seems to have degenerated, and it's the same throughout. And the alcoholism that's prevalent all over is a symptom of this. They've all lost hope. They've lost their vision.
Now, you're traveling around the United States asking and presenting Baha'is with the story of your experiences on the reservation. What are you asking of the friends when you meet with them?
We're asking them, first of all, to be happy, to see that projects like Amos Gibson can happen, that you actually can go out and tell people like yourself about the Baha'i Faith. We're hoping that they'll be inspired, and we'll be hoping that they'll be motivated to actually come and help us on the reservation or start some project of their own in their own areas.
And another thing we try mainly to get through is the youth. We want to show them that look at the problems the youth have all over the world, especially the reservations. And as Baha'i youth, we have these guidelines to defeat these problems, to meet our challenges. And we ask them to share these beautiful teachings, this beautiful medicine for these problems. And we ask them to go to these reservations, especially the youth, in the reservations are in tremendous amount of trouble.
So, in other words, you're reaching for youth to reach the youth, to commune with the youth on the reservations. But you would not put down someone who was retired with a mobile home. I understand you have a very active individual who travels around in his mobile home from place to place.
Yes, of course we don't put down the elderly. The interesting thing is the Baha'i youth, the youth in general, have the energy. Now the elderly gives us the guidance and the direction. And with that direction, with that guidance, and using our energy, the youth can move the world.
How long will you be working on this tour? How long is your tour now through the United States? You said you're going to end up in Florida.
Till the end of December.
The end of December.
And we're hoping that our last presentation will be before a youth conference in Phoenix. So we'll fly to that conference before a lot of Baha'i youth.
And present your slides and your hearts.
Yes.
Well, friends, it's been a very interesting evening. I've sincerely enjoyed having both Omid and John and Ed Roberts here with us on Baha'i Fireside. There's a great deal to be learned from the Native Americans. We so often see movies or read books or hear stories, but we don't have direct contact. These three individuals have spent some part of their time, and I suspect they will not end their contributions to the development of the Amos Gibson Project in South Dakota. I want to thank you both, and I know you're still here, Ed Roberts, and I want to thank you too for being here. This is Claudia Mulvaney for Baha'i Fireside. I hope you'll join us again soon. Good night.